How's it going? It's Friday, so what does that mean? It's Financial Fridays. So today what we're going to talk about is inflation. And I feel like that's a good topic to talk about, seeing what's going on today. And basically what inflation is the increase of prices and the fall of your purchasing value. And so what that basically means is normally the Feds say that inflation will be around 2% a year. And that usually is pretty true. I think in 2019, the inflation rate was like 1.8. And so basically, it's like if you buy a loaf of bread and it's $1 today, next year it'll be $1 or $2 if it's a 2% inflation rate. And then the year after that, it'll be $1 or $4 and some change, like in fractions of a penny and so forth and so on. It doesn't always work out that way, but if you look at the long-term effect, like no grocery store is like, oh, inflation happened, okay, raise our rates, 2% or whatever it is. But if you look at the long span, you'll see, just like what does a car cost today compared to 20 years ago? A house is a little different, but it still works. That's more of like supply and demand. But, what does a gallon of milk cost back in the day, like 20 years ago compared to now? It's like all that kind of stuff. Everything like slowly goes up. A movie ticket, everything goes up a little bit in price. A lot of times companies will try to cut costs by maybe shipping overseas for labor or other ways so they don't have to continue to raise their prices over time. But that's just happened. It's healthy. Like you want to be able to, everyone just gets a little more money and then everything costs a little more and everything slowly gets over time. It's also a way for people to borrow money at a low rate. And so it encourages growth. Inflation's fine, roughly around 2%. That's what the US usually targets. But here comes the problem, is hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is when inflation pretty much goes out of control, and what ends up happening is your money just becomes worthless. And this was really, you guys probably remember after World War One, maybe you don't, but Germany lost, and they basically had to pay all these reparations for, starting a war. So they had to pay back to, France, Britain, all, most of Europe for what they did. And so they had the giant bill, and they thought to themselves, well, we could pay this bill and it'd take forever, or we could just print a bunch of money and pay the bill. So that's what they did. They just printed a bunch of money. They paid the bill with the printed money. But what that does is it just floods the market with, what are they, francs? Deutsche francs? I don't know what their dollar is considered or called. So they flood the market with all this money. And so everything just became super expensive because supply and demand. Imagine if every person in the United States just got $1 million, right? Just boom, transferred to their bank account. People would be, their dollars would be worth, it wouldn't be worth $1 million. It'd be worth a lot less because everyone would go like, oh, hey, there's a house. Normally this house is $500,000. Oh, I have $1 million. Sure, I'll buy it. Well, now your neighbor has $1 million and your other neighbor has $1 million. The person down the street has $1 million and they all want to buy the house. Well, fine, I'll offer you $600,000, $700,000. And people just keep on going. Like, well, I also have a job that's pretty good, plus my $1 million. So I'll offer $1.1 million because normally it's $500,000. I just got this free $1 million. And so that happens. And then that same thing happens with, everything else. We're kind of fortunate where when it comes to like food and stuff, we don't have a short supply. There's a lot of it. So those will be like the last things to be hyperinflated. Just because the supply is so much doesn't meet our demand. But when everyone has a ton of money, people just be going out and buying whatever they can. All of a sudden, that shrinks up the supply, and so that causes things to get expensive. And it's going on right now in Venezuela. Their governments, I don't know the exact history. I know it has something to do with like they're tied to oil and the oil production like went down or something. And their government just started basically printing money. And now one hamburger, which costs about $1.50 in our US dollars, costs 1 month's salary. And it's about 5 million of their dollars. I don't know what it's called, whatever their dollars are called. $5 million of theirs. All their money just becomes worthless. And what happens is with hyperinflation, when you have slow inflation at 2%, people can plan for it. People can get used to it. Hyperinflation in Germany, for example, was going up 322% a month. A month. You can't adjust to that. No person can adjust to that. So you might be working in your job, and then all of a sudden, you're bringing home, $5,000 a month, but all of a sudden your $5,000 is now worth $1,500 in a month. Like you can't, like you would have to go to your boss and negotiate and say, hey, because of hyperinflation, but he has to bring in more money for his product. It just ruins the whole thing, crash. And that's why Germany collapsed. And that's why they had to go to World War II to get themselves out of this. And then, Venezuela is just falling apart. Tons of people are leaving Venezuela. Most of the people are surviving off of their family members leaving and sending money back that isn't whatever their dollar is called. So yeah, it's a mess over there. To get to hyperinflation, you need to be going up something like 50% a month or like 1,000% a year. We're not going to hit that. The feds are saying it's 2%. No, that's lies. With all the money we're borrowing and all that kind of stuff, that's not going to happen. I've seen a lot of experts say it's going to be double that, like probably 3 or 4%. I've even seen some people say it's going to be as high as 10, maybe 15% in a year, which if you look around you, look how expensive things are getting. Look how expensive homes are getting everywhere. Now, I know in like different places like where I live in San Diego, it's going up like crazy, but just pretty much across the board, homes are getting really expensive. I mean, gas prices are going up, and that has to do more with like the oil and stuff. But even look at the collectible market. Breaking records left and right, every day. Just ridiculous prices. It's because your dollar is worth less than it was before. It's not like these are worth more. It's just your dollar is worth less. And, before you know it, like, I remember talking to my friend, and he's like, oh, I just bought a car. It cost me $40,000. That's cheap for a car. And in my mind, I'm like, geez, that's really expensive, because I remember, like, back in the day, it's like you could get a brand new car for like $15,000. Now the average car is like, I don't know, like 25 or 30 grand for like an average new car. Not like top of the line or bottom of the barrel. But yeah, it's just everything's getting more and more expensive. And look at stocks recently. Like, how is it that we're in a pandemic, but stocks are at an all-time high? And then look at, the top 6 billionaires pretty much made, was it like average increase their net worth anywhere from like, I want to say like 3 times or something like. Look at Jeff Bezos. He's got divorced. Now he's richer than ever, even during a pandemic. Elon Musk went from, I think, the 50th richest person in the world to the first richest person in the world. I know it has to do with his company, but all these companies got really, really rich. Look at the stock market, all-time highs. That only happens because they have quarterly reports that show that they're making a ton of money, all this kind of stuff. People are getting rich. And this is what happens. We're not going to hit Venezuela or Germany hyperinflation numbers. We're not even going to hit hyperinflation. We're just going to be very inflated. Normal inflation times like 2, 3, 4 times. And what happens then is the only people that get rich are the already wealthy people that own assets. That's why I always tell people you need to have stocks. You need, get a house. Even collectibles. That's a hard asset. A hard asset. If you don't have any assets, what ends up happening? Everything around you gets expensive, but your salary stays the same, which means you're more poor. You can't just stick it in a bank account, your money, because every day that your money is stuck in just a normal savings account, inflation is bringing that down. So you need to have some kind of asset, whether it's a house, stocks, or even collectibles, things like that. Those are assets that you have that increase in value when the government decides to, we'll just inflate it a little more than normal. And then because all the rich people are fine because they own multiple homes that they probably rent out. They own tons of stocks. They have tons of collectibles, and all those things go up. So technically, yeah, their net worth goes higher, but it just raises with inflation that's going on. But what happens if you have no assets, inflation, your dollar becomes worth less, which means you stay the same, which actually means you went down. You went down in value. And those are the people that get hurt the most, is the poorer people end up getting screwed over with this more than normal inflation. And, I would not be surprised if they inflate all this so your dollar's worth less. And then down the line, when someone wants to get reelected, they're like, oh, we're going to change the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And everyone's like, yay, that's amazing. But since we inflated all the prices for the last 4 years, $15 an hour is pretty much the same as like $10 an hour 4 or 5 years ago. Could happen. I'm not saying it will, but I wouldn't put it past anyone. And that's the thing. It's like they're going to they work for the rich. And this benefits the rich greatly. And I mean, look at during this whole pandemic, like the rich just got richer and the poor got poorer. And that's just how it always goes. So you can't really fight it, but at least you can figure out what they're doing so you don't get screwed over as much. So that's why I'm always saying get hard assets, get stocks, get collectibles, get a house, get something like that. Put your money in that. If you just let it sit in a bank account, it's going to become worth less over time. If you buy things that aren't real assets, buy a PlayStation or something like that, that's not an asset. That's not going to go up in value, So yeah, that's just kind of what I'm, ranting about, I guess, is we're in a time because we borrowed so much money, put ourselves in so much debt. We're basically printing money. And the way that they print money now, it's not that they have a machine and print it. That is some, but a lot of it has to do with, which I found this out, it's kind of interesting, is when you go for a loan for a house or a car or whatever like that, and you go to the bank just creates money. So say you get a house for $500,000, it just creates $500,000 out of nothing and gives it to you to buy this house, right? And then you have to pay it back. You then pay it back, and then you pay the 500,000 over, say, 30 years or something like that. You pay the 500,000, but then you've also been paying interest, and say the interest is an extra 300,000. Well, then the bank just cancels out that original imaginary 500,000 that it made, and then keeps the 300,000 that you paid as interest, and that's how more money comes into the system. It just creates that out of nothing, which, this is why the banks got bailed out, is because the government needs the banks to create money. And that's just how our system is working. It's crazy, I know, but that's how it's done. If you want to know more, there's tons of people that are a billion times smarter than me on the subject. I'm just trying to give you just a little piece of it and kind of tell you what's going on. Even cryptocurrency is an asset, in case you're into that stuff. Like, I have all that stuff. I'm not saying just buy one. Like, you should spread your money over a bunch of different things, just so you work really hard for your money. And I don't want it to either go to waste, or you're trying to save it, and then the government comes by and just boom, now your money's like magic wand, boom, now your money's worth less over time as it just sits there. So that's why I encourage people just to, whether it be collectibles, crypto, houses, stocks, something like that. You have to put your money in those things just so you can hold on to it and so you can keep it. So yeah, I hope you like this video. If you like this kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, hit that little like button, and thanks.